As you guys know, this week's topics were really on the heavy side. So rather than focusing on the evolutionary basis of why men rape, I thought that it might be lighter and perhaps more interesting to focus on the counter-adaptations that women have had to solve the evolutionary problem of rape. Pregnancy caused by rape is a huge evolutionary problem. In general, rape can cause many psychological and physical consequences, but pregnancy caused by rape especially can have severe evolutionary consequences. The first way in which this might occur is because rape necessarily eliminates the possibility of mate choice. As we've learned in this class, it's really important for women to be able to choose the best set of genes for their potential offspring, and rape violates that ability. Secondly, rape also eliminates the possibility of parental investment, because it's very unlikely that a man who rapes a woman is going to stick around to help raise the child caused by that rape. Finally, rape has severe repercussions on relationships. For example, if a woman is currently in a relationship, it's very possible that after hearing that she was raped by another man, her current partner might abandon her. Or, on the other hand, if she's not in a relationship, the stigma associated with rape in our culture might prevent her from being able to find future mates. This leads to two main questions. First, do women engage in behaviors that reduce the likelihood of pregnancy related to rape? There have been many studies that have looked at this sort of thing, especially looking at risk avoidance in women and assessing whether they engage in risky or non-risky behaviors at different parts of their ovulatory cycle. However, such studies have led to conflicting results. A second question also comes into play. Are women in the ovulatory phase, when the risk of conception is greatest, better able to resist, fend off, or deter instances of sexual assault? This is the question that my paper focuses on. Specifically, it seeks to answer the question, does a woman's ability to resist sexual assault vary across the menstrual cycle? The authors of the study had several different methods which they used. I'll outline them briefly and then go into each one specifically. Before beginning the test, women were given a hand grip dynamometer reading. After that, they were presented with a scenario that was either sexual assault in nature or not. After reading the scenario and listening to it, they took a second hand grip dynamometer reading. And finally, after this part of the test, they were given a test to assess which part of the ovulatory cycle they were in. Now I'll go into each of these a little bit more in depth. A hand grip dynamometer is basically a gadget, as you see here, which a person holds in their hand, and they press it as hard as they can, or squeeze it as hard as they can. And I can't reach it, but that dial up top changes in response to how hard you're gripping it, and it measures this in kilograms. And hand grip strength is thought to be related to general strength. So it's supposed to be a general heuristic for a person's general strength at the time. And again, this was given to a woman performed this test before reading the scenario and again after the scenario. As I mentioned, there were two passages that the women read, or women were divided into two groups according to who read the control passage and who read the sexual assault passage. So here's a paragraph from the control passage. At the edge of the full parking lot, she pauses and looks for her car. Usually, it would bother her to have to search for her vehicle. But on this splendid day, she's happy to wander aimlessly through the sea of automobiles looking for her own. After a while, she spots her car and reaches in her pocket for her keys. As she opens her car door, she feels a blast of heat coming from the interior. She immediately rolls down the windows and slides down the sunroof. She starts her car, adjusts the stereo, and as she pulls out of the parking lot, those nearby can hear her music blasting. This was contrasted with the sexual assault passage, a paragraph of which is here. At the edge of the vacant parking lot, she pauses and looks for her car. It is parked between two of the few remaining vehicles, an old beat-up pickup truck, and one of those family vans. Happy with the sight of her car, she reaches into her coat pocket for her keys and finds that they are not there. They must be in her purse, and as she begins to feel around for them in her large bag, she notices that strange man ahead. This time, he appears to be headed directly towards her. At her car, she places her handbag on the hood and peers into it, but in the darkness, nothing is visible. She now feels his eyes upon her and frantically searches for her keys. Finally, her fingers make contact with her keys, and she pulls them out of her purse. As she inserts the key into her car door, she feels his cold hand on her shoulder. As you can see, both of these passages are very clearly related to finding a car in a parking lot, but they're very different in nature. After reading these scenarios and taking the second hand grip dynamometer reading, women were asked when their beginning of their last menses was, and using the forward cycling method, so counting 12 to 13 days after the onset of her first menses, they were able to estimate when her next ovulation should have been. They also tried to confirm this using a urine test which measured the amounts of LH. As you guys remember, there's an LH surge about 12 to 13 days after the onset of menses that marks around the time of ovulation. And only women who had corresponding results between when they reported their last menses and what this urine test revealed were counted in this study. After excluding the certain number of women whose results were not concordant, they had a sample of 192 people, which is a pretty large sample size, and the results were highly significant. As you can see here, women who read the sexual assault passage and were ovulating were the only ones who had a stronger response after reading the passage. So on the y-axis there's total hand grip difference, and on the x-axis there's menstrual phase. And you can see here that for almost all of the women, total hand grip difference actually decreased after reading the passage, whereas for ovulating women who read the sexual assault scenario specifically, the difference increased, so meaning they were stronger after reading the passage. Before I go into the specifics of why this study is important, I thought it might be important to bring in a few critical analyses. First, the study had many more ovulating than menstruating women, and there have been studies that show that ovulating women in general are more likely to volunteer for studies, and moreover, because there was a urine test involved in the study, there might have just been stigma associated with wanting to participate in the urine test when you're menstruating. Secondly, there's some debate about the accuracy of LH test results, since it points to a window of time as opposed to a specific date of ovulation. Finally, there's some debate about whether these results would be specific to sexual assault. For example, it might have been a stronger study had they looked at the difference between just a regular scary scenario compared to a sexual assault scenario. The authors kind of explained this by saying that because women didn't have any difference after reading the control passage, perhaps the results were specific to sexual assault, if you remember in the graph. In general, though, the conclusion that we can draw from this study is that women may have been selected to behave in ways that reduce the likelihood of conception as a consequence of rape. In this case, perhaps by becoming stronger when in response to a sexually scary scenario. Thank you.